Thank you so much for choosing Morning at NTV as your preferred starter for the last day of the week officially, but also the last day of the swearing-in ceremony that is happening at Parliament for the 12th Parliament. So as we pick up the mantle of the day, of course, there's so many discussions that we want to have, and we're going to be looking into the rule of law for us as a country, reflecting on the last 5 years and also thinking through where we are right now at a pivotal point, a point of transition, and what needs to be done at this particular juncture if we're going to be having a different face of the rule of law, power and accountability in Uganda's new political term. And so Uganda having entered a new political term with the swearing in of the President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni earlier on this week, and MPs taking their oath at Parliament. They will be beginning their work officially next week, and citizens across the country are watching closely to see what next chapter will mean for governance, accountability, but also justice as well as democracy. And so this morning we want to ask ourselves a very important national question. Are Uganda's institutions strong enough to protect the rule of law in the new political era? And so that is where we want to put our emphasis and focus in terms of the discussions that we're going to be having this morning, and be able to say perhaps there is a way that the institutions can function better and serve you as a Ugandan better in the next 5 years. To my immediate left, I'm being joined by Monday Akol, a political commentator and analyst on Ugandan East African affairs with deep insight into governance, as well as regional politics, democratic transitions and state institutions. Monday Akol, good morning to you, and you're most welcome, Ndugu.
Morning to you. The pleasure is mine joining you on this show.
Yeah, I will say it's a pleasure to sit next to you. This is the second cycle to which we're sitting together and having discussions around national issues. And then we're also being joined by Yasin Sentumbwe. He is a lawyer and governance analyst. Human rights and governance are his focal points, bringing constitutionalism, citizens' rights as well as accountability, and the justice system in Uganda. Good morning to you, Yasin.
Good morning to our viewers and you, our host. I'm actually more humbled to be here at NTV, and I look forward to getting deeper into the subject matter.
Okay. Yeah. Now, speaking of subject matters, this week is about news, breaking news, breaking news. And so the most recent news that we have received as a country is that the Office of the Deputy Chief Justice now has a person that has been appointed by the President, awaiting to go through the system and then be vetted and then officially take charge of the Office of the Deputy Chief Justice. That is Justice Kawumi Kazibwe. He's been trusted, he's been found worthy to be fitting in this office. And so as we pick up this conversation, I just want to pick a comment or two from you gentlemen in respect to this appointment. I will start with Yasin.
Thank you. I think the appointment of Justice Kazibwe is timely, but it is unfortunate that we took so long to realize that the office was vacant. Actually, we should not have had a new president without a deputy chief justice. Any country that looks forward to promoting rule of law and constitutionalism should first strengthen pillars or institutions that carry the subject so-called rule of law. You cannot say that we are a law-abiding country when we cannot have those who interpret and adjudicate the law. The Constitutional Court has a number of constitutional petitions, but the Chief Justice, the Deputy Chief Justice, is the head of this institution. Do we look at the time how the management of this institution has been without a substantive Deputy Chief Justice? What has been happening in the Court of Appeal? So for me, I think yes, we have the appointment. It is timely, but we should be faulted for ever giving any room when an office is vacant. It's been a while since the former Deputy Chief Justice retired, His Lordship Butera. It's been a long overdue. What has been happening in both the Constitutional Court and in the Court of Appeal? So I have no doubt that Justice Kazibwe has been tested, and as a believer in the radical Niba ideology, I actually wish to introduce myself that I'm the head of ideology in the radical Niba under the stewardship of the Supreme Leader Isaac Kimaze Semakadde, who also serves as the president of the Uganda Law Society and the head of the bar.
Okay.
So as for the radical Niba, we welcome the appointment of His Lordship.
Okay, Monday, as you give us your comments, Yasin has made a comment that says the fact that the office had been vacant for quite a long time. It's not the first office to be vacant for that long. I think we've had the governor of Bank of Uganda, that office was also vacant for years. And so, even at IGG. So, you know, office vacancy is not something of a bother to this country, I would say.
No, thank you very much. I must congratulate the person that has been appointed, all those who have been appointed. But remember, the president did say that this is term, no sleep. And he has kicked off the term by making strategic appointments. Now, the other issue I also want us to appreciate is that running a country in Africa is not like it's done in the West, that every other time a position, a senior position falls vacant, there are a number of consultations you have to make before you can really come up with an appointment. So at times that delays the process. And we can always say better late than never, that we are happy. Justice Kaumi has actually been appointed, and it is our prayer that he actually meets the expectations of Ugandans and also meets the expectations of the appointing authority in serving us as the Deputy Chief Justice of this country. Now, still, as you have said something that offices falling vacant for a very long time. Of course, as earlier said, in most cases, appointments go through a process. Of course, the appointing authority has to consult. You know, Uganda is made up of so many blocks. You have the Muslims, you have the Christians, you have the Bantu, you have the Luo, you have the Atikere. So all these groups, you have to ensure that you balance them so that really the balance, the boat can balance. Otherwise, if you make appointments without consultations, you risk actually having a government that looks to be one-sided, because you automatically choose those you know who are within your circles. Yet perhaps there could be other people outside your circles who can really serve better, but also bring a national resemblance to the government. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Another issue that is coming to the Ugandans in the wake of today is the issue of the speakership and the race that is before the 12th Parliament that must decide who will be their speaker. The week beginning off again with PLU leadership going on social media platforms and retracting their position on those that had been earlier endorsed by SEC, and that's Anita Mong and Thomas Tayewa. And in the wake of this morning, and in between there, really the week, there's been so many contentious issues around the speakers, new Rolls Royce, and most recently the speaker's extravagant dressing budget that people have been having, a debate over on social media. And in the wake of this morning, wind of news that now there's a new person that certain factions are interested in, and that is Honorable Jacob Oboth for the speakership. What does this say in terms of where we have been in the 11th Parliament and what was needed to be rectified for a better Parliament that is incoming Monday.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. The news of Oboth reminds me of two scenarios. One is the Kenyan scenario, that is in 2002, when President Daniel Arap Moi was actually about to step down as the president of Kenya. So there were factions, there were groups that really had strategically positioned themselves to take up leadership. We had Professor George Saitoti, who was vice president then. There was Kalonzo Musyoka, who had actually served as a speaker, and from Ukambani. There were people like Musalia Mudavadi. So there were a number of people that had really strategically positioned themselves to take up the leadership of KANU. Then, of course, President Moi went around, brought Raila Odinga on board from the opposition, making him a powerful Secretary General. So when he came in, he came with those ambition to take over. So he realized that these groups had actually paralyzed the operation of KANU, and therefore he brought in a new blood and fresh person, that was Uhuru Kenyatta. But unfortunately, he had not done his groundwork well. KANU lost elections. Now, the other scenario is in Tanzania. In 2015, when Kikwete was actually about to leave power, you realize that CCM had 3 candidates. They had Edward Lowassa, was their former prime minister and a very powerful and rich man. Then there was also Bernard Mende, who was also the foreign affairs minister then. And you see, the practice had always been that whoever becomes foreign affairs minister, your chances of becoming president are higher. So these two had actually seriously campaigned within CCM that CCM was at the verge of breaking. So when it came to the delegates conference, President Kikwete said, okay, these two, since they risk splitting our party, we are disqualifying all of them. Let us have fresh elections, fresh nominations. In those nominations, that's when Magufuli came on board. But you see, with the CCM, they had done their groundwork and Magufuli went through. So this is the same scenario, that you find that NRM had two. They had Right Honorable Anita Among, and of course they had a friendly force, Norbert Mao, that were in the media vying for speakership. Now, bringing somebody actually who had not shown interest, who had not even publicly, so it is to say, look here, now we don't want anyone who's going to paralyze our party. I mean, the parliamentary caucus, let us have somebody who's new. Now, the endorsement of Honorable Oboth actually confirms what has always been, because you remember even when Right Honorable Olanya passed on, his name was one of those that were circulated. Actually, at event, we were told that he had been told to resign, so that he can actually be part of. But how it really did not work out well, I think it was just postponing his assumption of that office. And also, you know, when you're dealing with revolutionary Pan-African leaders, these are people who are foresighted. I'll give an example. When Nelson Mandela was president of South Africa, his natural choice as his successor was Ramaphosa. But he did not want to push it directly. And you realize that after him, Thabo Mbeki came in, then Zuma, but later Ramaphosa comes in naturally. Still the same thing in Zambia when Kenneth Kaunda, of course, after long he had left power. At one time he told people that Hakainde Hichilema, the current president, told me this young man has all it takes to lead this country. And he did several years after Kaunda died. The man has come in as president. So when revolutionary Pan-African leaders point at somebody and they start nurturing him, actually that person always has something that it takes. Whether with their support or without their support, it later turns out that really he gets what he has been planned for.
Okay, all right. Yasin, from legal perspectives, what should be the reflections for the country, and what must they be paying attention to as this transition is being orchestrated?
Thank you so much. For me, I want to categorically state that with or without this endorsement, the members of parliament have the utmost autonomy to elect the next speaker of the 12th Parliament. Besides the endorsement from Patriotic League, from NRM, even NUP can endorse. They are free to endorse. DP might endorse Nobert Mao. FDC can endorse their own. So I think an endorsement, of course, we may take it by practice. That an endorsement from the ruling political party amounts to an election. But for me, I hold it that the members of parliament have the final say on who shall be the next speaker of the 12th parliament. Away from that, my colleague here has alluded to the fact that parties train. You all know that for the past perhaps 40 years, the NRM government has been in charge of this country, has lived on outsourcing. I think much of its work has been on outsourcing for brilliant players that have been built elsewhere. I will give you an example of Detayebwa, the former speaker, Honorable Anita Among, the current Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Nobert Mao, is an ardent supporter of the Democratic Party. I think also Beta Among, is she Beta Among? The wife to
Akena.
Jimmy Akena. I think, whereas my colleague states that revolutionary parties have a tendency of training, the NRM has done us a disservice in this area. That right from all people, the likes of Todrong, the likes of Namaya Anja, Rosemary, and the minister, I think, for general duties, the lady from Kasure Lumumba. All of these were deeply made. And the NRM seemingly had nothing. No wonder that towards the election period, they seek to endorse someone else, forgetting that this lady has been in office for the past half a decade. So I think, whereas other parties, as mentioned by Monday, have taken a step, the NRM has not enabled us feel this kind of leadership. And this contradicts what the National Unity Platform did in the first place. They have since established a school of leadership. An indication that with or without the principle, with or without the founders, the norms of the parties shall remain on the boards in the training institution of the National Unity Platform. I think this was the same trend with the likes of the past leaders, Paul Kawanga Semogerere, Dr. Milton Obote. They did more work because the likes of our current president were chosen at the time when they were least expected to be leaders. At what time did Museveni assume ministerial position? At what time? At what age? How comes at this age we still have those who can hardly deliberate in the National Assembly because of their age or advanced age?
The argument being that they are representative of the population, because the population has senior citizens, and so them being senior citizens, are they not eligible? Yes, they are, right?
They are, yes, for that purpose. But we may also ask, how do they assume these offices if the people were the majority and their decisions matter? I do not value the endorsement of Jacob or both. I will take it to the people that the members of parliament have the utmost final say on who should lead the parliament. And to me, If that is done, I will respect the rule of law. That the rule of law has dictated this.
Okay. Now, speaking of the rule of law, so many people, especially, of course, focusing on our audience, they keep hearing this phrase, the rule of law, in reference to governance and democracy in our country. And we would like you to give us a breakdown of when we say the rule of law, what does it entail and how does it touch every structure, every institution, and every arm of leadership?
By rule of law, I want to say that here, when we say that the members of parliament have the final say on who should be the next speaker of the 12th parliament, everyone is given equal opportunity. So Anita Among can favorably compete with Norbert Mao, with Jacob Oboth, and if there is no any interference that makes it to cease to be rule of law, but maybe power, influence, then that's when we can see Anita Among disfavored. But as far as I know, rule of law gives her equal footing.
Taking it away from the speakership, but generally now speaking, rule of law and what it means.
For me, I think one thing I was actually discussing yesterday, rule of law would mean that at this time, even addressing Honorable Anita Among as speaker, as the tendency has been in the past, since the dissolution of parliament, that was a great deviation from rule of law. I also asked a question somewhere yesterday, that has the clerk to parliament taken over parliament from the time this institution was dissolved? One, I have come to realize that Honorable Anita Among, by her deviation from rule of law, influenced the swearing in of her husband, whose name in the alphabetical order should have come on the second day. Because we cannot have A and M coming next. I saw Anita Among, I saw Amanio Betty from Mukono, and I saw alteration of the list of members of parliament that had been scheduled for swearing in on that day. The clerk to parliament's power had been swapped. The clerk to parliament's power had been overshadowed by the person of the so-called speaker, who had since ceased to be speaker at the time when the parliament was dissolved. So I think when it comes to institutional adherence to rule of law, the best time to test it, the current parliament has started on a dirty piece of paper. The fact that Magogo would swear in before someone beginning with letter B, before George Musisi, it's a shame on us. And I think in terms of accountability, transparency, and integrity, the clerk to parliament owes this country an explanation as to why the husband to the former speaker sworn in before those other people. Okay. That is what I treat as rule of law, accountability, transparency, and integrity.
Yasin has used an example to really bring it home and alive to the people. But Monday, where you are seated and focusing on fairness, focusing on equal treatment and ensuring that ordinary citizens are protected, especially by the institutions of this country, what would be your definition of the rule of law?
Yeah, my definition of the rule of law is that whatever laws we have, when it comes to implementation, the implementation must be seen to cut across. That we should not bend the rules when it comes to particular people. If it is A, let it be A across the board. But I also wish to react to something he brought in. You see, it is not right when you say that NRM has not nurtured leaders. Now, I want to speak from a point of observation that from 1986 to 2005, there was a movement system that everybody, whether you are formerly DP, whether you are formerly UPC, you are part of that. And ideally through that, it was individual merit that somebody had to train. In other words, you had to shine as an individual. And through that arrangement, very many people, young people, actually came up with pressure groups. And it's through those pressure groups that they used actually to identify leaders. That is number one. Number two, NRM, ever since they came to power, they've had a system of having youth structures. Actually, you've realized that in Africa, Uganda has the best youth structures, that they have a youth council and we have representatives of the youth in parliament. It has been there for a very long time that other countries actually come here to benchmark that. So very many people have passed through those youth councils. I can actually give you a very good example. We had Right Honorable Dan Kidega, who was the speaker Iyala. He went through UNSA, Uganda National Students Association. He became a youth MP for Northern Uganda until he became speaker of Iyala. We have the current chief whip of NRM, that is Obua. He was MP for Northern Uganda. He was a member of the National Youth Council. He was a student leader, and he has been an MP and now the chief whip of NRM. Now, you talked about Todong. Todong has been, throughout his life, I can say, he has been really an NRM and movement person throughout. And you see, he has risen through the ranks, becoming the Secretary General. So in 2005, when we go into multi-party, most of those people you're talking about that were shopped from that were good from other parties. Remember, most of them, since they had served within the movement system, now people chose which parties to join. So we can ably say that now let's take from 2005 to present the performance of parties in terms of grooming leaders. So you find that since 2005 to today, parties have had their youth wings. They've had their youth wings, and the youth wings have actually been operating effectively. That you realize that every after 5 years, the parties bring in their youth wing, and also the youth wing of NRM has been active. How? That almost all the slots of parliament for the youth, actually they have been taking them just because of how active they have been. So that said, back to now to the issue that we really having on table. He raised a very important issue of Magogo being brought nearer. Of course, now those are some. Of course,
not him alone, but
yes,
the people even from her region all swearing in at the same time with her.
Yeah, well, I think that one really the nation needs an explanation from the leadership of parliament. In other words, we should also give them a benefit of doubt to give us their good intentions. Why was it done so? Because if the culture, the criteria was alphabetical, then how come that M swears in before B? That's an explanation, because ideally parliament is an institution of government and they are accountable to the wananchi. So we expect the communications director, somebody in charge of communication, and the clerk of parliament to actually come up with a statement to explain that. Why is it that some people came in when they are not supposed to? But also, we've also seen instances where somebody can put it in writing, can actually request that maybe I have a flight, maybe I have a sick person, maybe I'm doing this, I request you. So Parliament will explain to us in what circumstances actually that happened. Yeah, it's like whenever we go for voting, you also see some people are impatient, jumping the queue. Not so. Yes, because they feel they are strong enough, maybe they are known and they want to jump the queue. But there are those who are humble enough. With humility, they will line up with the rest of the people, and then until their turn comes, okay? Until their turn comes, and also they can go. And I've seen this during presidential elections, because I saw it in Kenya, in Tanzania. Also here on a number of days, you've seen also President Yoweri Museveni lining up We also saw Bobby Wine, the same thing. We saw them lining up. Dr. Kizza Besigye, we've seen them with humility. They line up, go through the queue until their turn. So why was it different from Parliament is what the nation will be waiting to hear from the leadership of Parliament. Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. Reflecting on the sixth term, Yasin, we want to now look at some of those key issues that really were hinged on the rule of law being respected or disrespected, and what it has cost us as a country.
I think rule of law should not be entirely talked about, but it should be seen to be also done or practiced, you know. I have had incidences where the institution of Parliament, I think it is the committee, is it a committee on human rights, where it is alleged that members asked the chairperson of the Uganda Human Rights Commission to give them money for them to be able to pass her budget. Rule of law would require that as members of Parliament, their roles are clearly defined. Legislation, oversight, representation, and appropriation. If a member of Parliament breaches any of those roles, then the rule of law goes to sleep. If someone asks you for any sort of enticement to do their work, then we are not under the rule of law. We are under certain kind of personal dealings. Two, I have just told you that the husband to the speaker would swear in before other people. That ceased to be a public matter. It ceased to be a matter hinged on rule of law, but to a personal matter. It is us. We are both members of Parliament, and we decide how to run Parliament, other than considering the establishment of what? Parliament. So it becomes a personal matter. So in those areas, I've also seen, I think the Uganda Law Society published a report on the previous election, where the Electoral Commission procured biometric machines that completely failed to serve the nation. And the institution of the IGG, the Auditor General, has not come out to express their concern in regards to this matter. Public offices are held in trust of the people. These are fundamental constitutional objectives that can never be amended. I think under objective, national objective, and directive principle 18, public offices are held in trust of the people to whom accountability is owed. Giving accountability is a form of upholding the rule of law. If the Electoral Commission has not been investigated, if the members who allegedly solicited money from the chairperson of the Uganda Human Rights Commission were pardoned, then one is free to say it is only a rule of law to those that must be dealt with. It ceases to be rule of law when those who seem to be above it are the ones in conflict with the rule of law. I can ably tell you that my colleague has said that the NRM has trained leaders. Well and good, it's okay. But how have these leaders influenced enforcement of rule of law in the NRM, which NRM is also the ruling party. We should not only see leaders being in a position, but we must feel their leadership in terms of service delivery. Rule of law cannot thrive where persons can hardly apply for bail in courts of law. You have seen persons that have clocked mandatory bail, and the courts are neither bothered nor the leaders. Rule of law thrives in equal opportunities. Equal opportunities. And equal opportunities is not entirely about the majority have it, but us treating ourselves as we are all Ugandans. But how often has this been exhibited? I want to tell you, if we are in a democratic state, a country that adheres to rule of law, at one time the Speaker of Parliament uttered a statement that make sure that those Bagandas do not get the numbers. One would ask whether Parliament at that time was sitting as a legislative arm of government that is enacting laws for growth and development of the country, or rather it was enacting a law that targeted a certain group of people.
Does this mean then that, Imande, institutions have continued to weaken at the expense of personality-driven leadership and oversight versus institutional leadership and oversight?
Well, rule of law, as he has brought it out, is supposed, ideally laws are supposed to bring fairness in society. That laws must be the equalizer. Whether you're poor, whether you're rich, whether you're powerful, whether you are powerless, at least it's an equalizer. That you know that when you are before the law, you'll be treated equally as citizens. But again, this Uganda is known for being a paper tiger, that we have very good laws, very good policy, but we've always been poor implementers. The implementation is lacking, and therefore rule of law in any institution is very much dependent on the integrity and personality of the office holders. Once you have an office holder with the integrity and the character that is deserved to occupy that office, automatically things will work out. But when you have a head of an institution who is actually used to the shortcuts, definitely they will always look for a way how any loophole, because every law has a loophole, not so? Yes, has an escape route. So, and you see, what is most interesting is that actually this generation is a generation of learned people. You find people having masters, PhDs, people have 2 masters, have 2 bachelors, occupying those offices. The first thing they get to when they get into those offices is to look for the escape routes in whatever laws they have. So that when they do something, so like you talked about the issue of passing budgets. Yes, we know that the role of the parliamentarians is to legislate and then pass the budgets. You get it. Look at the allocations made. But of course, this is not done on camera. It's done behind the scenes, where they talk to the people, if you don't bring this, we are not going to pass your what? Your budget. And therefore, that goes back to the character of the head of the institution. Because if these people have come and reported to you, what have you done about it? Because it would see the head of parliament then taking action. But to our surprise, she was in Rengo defending somebody who was actually...
Which somebody, people of Rengo,
yes.
even after seeing how she behaved, yes, brought her back into parliament.
And now also, that brings us to we Ugandans. You see, also rule of law calls for a citizenry, or the citizens who are actually up to the task. Ugandans, it's as if we have abdicated our civic responsibility. Because we should also demand, because citizens also can demand, say, look here, A is this. Why is it? Why are you bringing us B? I remember there was a time when Honorable Edward Rugumayo was appointed, and there was a certain section of society that said, no, this one during the 80s, he did say this about a particular group, and that delayed his appointment, because he was supposed to clear, because the public vetting. So then now, that is how, then we say, yes, we had rule of law, because the public were allowed to participate in the vetting of a what? Of a leader. I don't know at what point it actually slowed down, that these days you will rarely see the public being involved in vetting, because actually the public could really discuss you, bring in this, all the views brought in would actually inform whether to be cleared or not. But now you find today there is even somebody who has been rejected by the appointments committee, say go back to the appointing authority, and before you can know it, the person has sworn in. So these are some of the, I think these are some of the anomalies we have here and there that undermine the rule of law. How I wish we go back to those good days of the movement, movement days, where really you'd see the public scrutinizing, looking through. They would actually look at a person as being appointed, go through his history up to the village where he grew up. So if you're one that used to harass people's girls there, if you're one that used to kill, to steal people's cows, then people will bring it up, say, look here, this person maybe used to do ABCD. So these are things that we need to come on. Then lastly is the enforcement wing of our laws, the enforcement side. That yes, much as we have the laws, but these laws, if they are not put into use, if we don't see them working, then they're as good as not being there.
Okay, yeah. We're being joined by our correspondent on ground from Kumi District, Kenneth Odele, who is having an engagement with the youth from the Jobless Corner. He'll be letting us know why they call it the Jobless Corner, but also the voices of the youth, especially in terms of what their plight out of maybe some of the issues that are being raised on the table right now, because people have become bigger than the offices, and so it has underserved the populations that are meant to be served by those officers. And us closer to the Jobless Corner of the young men, are quite impressed that in as much as it's Jobless Corner, when you hear the phrase and then the people who have come out to speak to us here on NTV, it shows you a picture, it's an interpretation of what we have as a country, and what that then speaks in terms of leadership, especially on national level. And allow me to pick your minds on what the picture you've seen and the voices that you have had, and how they translate into part of the discussions that we're having here. I'll start with you, Yasin.
Thank you, Priscilla. Actually, for me, on a lighter note, I want to appreciate the people of Kumi. They are more far foresighted than maybe other communities. This happens even in Europe. In Europe, once you lose a job, there's a body where you register. Because during that period, you are expected to be receiving a stipend from government. So it becomes hard for you to wake up one day that this tax and this and this and this has been imposed on me, when actually I was not earning. They will only charge you when you're earning. So I think I credit the people of Kumi. And I think my friend here is from Kumi. Please, this is the way to go. Now, these people actually tell you that government should gazette areas or put in place institutions that can look out for people who have finished schools or school. I think it was there before, where everyone who was completing school would register with certain respective ministries so that they can always be called upon. Actually, even before, people would always be called upon that we are in need of this. I think it is about population explosion, but in terms of planning, this should be the way to go. These people actually are here, but majority of them are in the age of being fathers. Unfortunately, I've not seen women or girls. This is quite not good. I urge the people of Kumi to check. The women should be also brought on board. But on the other hand, these are all persons that are befitting of being fathers. So if they are here, what is happening to their families while they are waiting for someone to identify them as potential employees? How long do they stay in this jobless corner? Because by the time someone is seated there waiting for someone to identify them, they are actively not engaged in work. So what happens after that day, after the second day, after the third day? And I want to sound a warning that the reflection in Kumi is just more organized. But this is the true meaning of the Ugandan community. I just want us to take a little time and reflect on the persons that have been evicted in the alleged trade order, where people have endeavored to find capital, set up unemployment, pay tax to government, try to look after their families and organize them for this country to tax in the future. And the government comes up that there is need to clear the streets. For whom are you preparing the streets other than the Ugandans? Can the streets live without the Ugandans?
Okay. All right. Monday, a call.
Yeah, thank you, Priscilla. I must thank the people of Kumi, and this is actually it has inspired me more that when I travel down there to Kumi, I will look for the corner and also maybe have a chat with them. But from what we've seen, you realize that we only have men and not the women. Now the question is, should we say that Teso and Kumi district in particular empowers ladies, that every lady who finishes the easily get jobs? That is number one. Number two, should we also assume that the women in Teso are innovative, that even when they don't get a formal job, they'll find something to do? Number three, I have also, when I observed the people who are there, we also realized that yes, you've been a teacher for the last 16 years, you've not been employed. Because if you're a teacher, it doesn't mean that you must work, you must end up in the classroom. It doesn't stop you from starting any other work. So all the other thing is also we needed to know at the jobless corner is what kind of corner is it? Is it a corner where people meet to drink? Is it a corner where people meet to gossip? Do they have the database? Do they collect data from all these people? Say, look here, as a district we have so many graduates and this number is employed and this is not employed. He talked about Europe. Yes, in Europe actually you realize most countries in Europe, you find that not every district, every commune, a commune is at a level of a sub-county. Every sub-county registers its human resource. And when they register its human resource, they take their numbers and email that when jobs are advertised, it's that very commune that sends it to their people. That even the commune bargains if it is a national institution. And they say, look here, we also need this share. And that's when the quota system comes in, that even when they are employing, a national organization employing, they must factor in that it is a country and every community has to be represented. So ideally, as youth across the country, those who finish university, let us borrow a leaf from the jobless corner of Kumi. But I also say the jobless corner of Kumi, they need to go further than just gathering Yes, let them have the data collected of all the people who are unemployed, and also look at alternatives to employment.
Well, since you've said that that's your home district, now you know where to start from to help them upscale to the recommendations that you are giving. But at the end of the day, as this all brings into light the fact that in as much as we are at the hinge of a new political term, we get to see a challenge both for leaders and a challenge for institutions, not only to govern but also to ensure that there's a strengthening of public trust and strengthening of public service. At the end of the day, those are the critical things and that contribute to the string that ties us all together as a country, looking out for one another and being able to ensure that my neighbor is better or as good as I am. Speaking of neighbors, my neighbor Stella Nante is on the hinge. She's going to be coming in with Masu Zemutia right after this. But at 10 o'clock exactly, we will be picking up on our NTV live coverage of the 12th Parliament swearing-in ceremony that is happening at Parliament this morning. Today is the final day. And so starting from 10 o'clock all the way into the afternoon, we will be giving you that live coverage and commentary that will be coming from the bold voice of 20 years. I being part of those bold voices, I am Priscilla Regina Naluoga. Have a